It was the quiet that changed everything for me. I spent most of last year working maintenance for a touring park on the edge of Northumberland. It wasn't a big place, just a scattering of static caravans, a reception hut, and a service road that cut through a patch of forest before connecting to the main road. During the summer, it was lively, full of families and noise. But by late October, the place emptied out so completely that some evenings I felt like the only person left in that valley. I didn't mind it at first. I liked the quiet. It gave me time to think, and I'd always assumed I was comfortable being alone. The caravan I lived in during the off-season was tucked away at the far end of the site. It wasn't modern or nice, but it was warm enough and had a working door lock, which was all I cared about. The evenings were always the same. Check the boilers, walk the grounds, fix whatever had broken during the day, then go back to my caravan, make something simple to eat, and sit in the silence until it was late enough to sleep. At first, I thought of it as peaceful, but after a few weeks, the silence started feeling different, too deep, too heavy, like the whole forest was listening. Even the wind seemed to die earlier than it should. It wasn't frightening at the time, just strange in a way I couldn't quite explain. One night in early November, the temperature dropped harder than usual. The ground froze, and the air felt sharp. I finished my rounds early because there were only 3 caravans booked that week, and all of them were empty that night. As I walked back to my place, the frost on the grass made a faint crackling under my boots, the only sound anywhere around me. I remember looking toward the tree line and feeling something tighten low in my stomach. The trees looked darker than usual. I brushed it off and went inside. I locked the door out of habit, boiled the kettle, and tried to settle the uneasy feeling that had been growing all night. I put it down to the cold, maybe the isolation, maybe just a long week catching up with me. I told myself I'd watch a bit of TV and go to bed early. I must have fallen asleep on the sofa, because I woke up sometime after midnight with the TV still on and the caravan freezing cold. The heater had shut itself off again. It did that sometimes when the fuse tripped. I got up to reset it, annoyed more than anything, and that's when I heard something outside. It wasn't a loud noise. If I had been fully awake, I might have convinced myself I imagined it. But I was still groggy, standing barefoot on the cold linoleum, and the sound came again before I could talk myself out of it. It was a slow shift of weight on frozen gravel. One soft crunch, a pause, then another. The caravan was old enough that the walls carried sound differently. Anything close to the exterior felt like it was right next to me. I stood completely still, listening, waiting for the wind or a fox or something familiar to break the tension, but nothing did. Just that slow crunch of frozen ground. I turned off the TV. The silence rushed in so quickly that my heart started pounding. I walked to the window nearest the door and pulled the curtain back just a little, careful not to move it more than necessary. The outside light didn't reach far, just a small cone of pale yellow on the ground. Beyond that was only darkness. I didn't see anyone, but I also didn't see anything that would have made that sound. I let the curtain fall back into place and stepped away from the window. I wanted to believe it was an animal, a deer or a badger, but the spacing between the sounds didn't match. Animals move quickly, erratically. This had been controlled, almost cautious. I went back to the heater, reset the fuse, and tried to shake off the rising tension. But before I could walk away, the sound came again. This time, on the opposite side of the caravan. Someone was walking around the perimeter, not trying to be loud, but not trying to hide either. Just circling. I felt a wave of heat flush through my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't move. My mind kept scrambling for explanations. Security doing a surprise check, a lost hiker, someone drunk who wandered in from the road. But none of those options made sense. This place was deserted. I was the only staff on site. No one should have been out there, walking in slow circles around my caravan at midnight. I walked to the kitchen counter and grabbed the only thing that felt remotely like a weapon, a long, heavy wrench I'd forgotten to take out of my jacket pocket earlier that day. My hand shook around it, not from fear exactly, but from the adrenaline hitting all at once. The sound moved again. A continuous, deliberate path around the caravan. I tried to look out another window, but the takeaway boxes from earlier blocked part of the view. I nudged them aside and raised the curtain just enough to see the gravel. And this time, I saw something. Not a person, not an animal, but a shape, a shadow moving along the far edge of the light, where visibility faded into darkness. Tall enough to be a man, upright, pacing slowly, every part of me locked up. I froze in that position, holding the curtain a few inches open, barely breathing. The shape didn't stop walking. It kept its slow, steady pace until it reached a point where the caravan wall blocked my view. I let the curtain drop and backed away until I reached the center of the room. I don't know how long I stood there listening. My ears strained for any change. Faster steps, a knock on the door, the sound of someone testing the handle. But nothing happened. The footsteps stopped altogether, and the sudden lack of noise felt worse than the footsteps themselves. It was as though whoever had been circling now stood still, waiting. I forced myself to move back to the window by the door. I lifted the curtain again, slower this time. The outside light flickered once from the cold. The gravel gleamed faintly with frost. There was no one there. I looked farther, scanning the area between the caravans and the maintenance shed. But the light didn't reach that far. The darkness held everything beyond a certain point. If someone stood just outside the light, I would never see them. The heater clicked back on behind me, and I almost jumped out of my skin. That was the moment I realized I didn't want to stay in the caravan any longer. I thought about calling someone, but I knew exactly how the call would go. It's late. You're tired. It's an animal. And I didn't want to explain that the sound had been too heavy, too controlled, too precise. I quietly grabbed my jacket, my keys, and my boots, and reached for the door handle. Before I touched it, I froze. A faint sound came from outside. I stood there, with my hand inches from the handle, listening to something outside. Then, just as slowly as it had started, it stopped. No movement. Just nothing. It was worse than hearing it. Silence returned, thick and absolute. I backed away from the door, put my boots on with hands that barely worked, and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. No sound came from outside. Nothing changed. Eventually, I unlocked the door, opened it, and stepped outside into air so cold it felt like my lungs were freezing. The gravel crunched loudly under my boots, louder than anything I'd heard all night. I walked to my car without looking anywhere except ahead. I unlocked it, got inside, and drove off the site. When I returned the next morning with the site manager, there were footprints in the frost, one set, circling my caravan 3 full times before stopping directly in front of the door. And they stopped abruptly, as if the person who made them had simply stepped away into thin air. No one was ever identified. The only explanation anyone gave was the same empty reassurance. Probably a trespasser. But trespassers don't walk slow circles around a caravan at midnight. Trespassers don't stand at your door like they already know you're frozen on the other side. I don't work there anymore, and I don't sleep alone in remote places ever again. Thanks for watching No Sleep Tonight, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow and keep these horrors coming. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, sleep well.